Hey, so we're over in insight number 3, 2 Kings 23. We're going to focus on verse 25, but let's have a little rundown on what happens in this particular story. So Josiah is a young boy. I think he's 8 when he takes over the throne because his dad gets killed. I remember that. Nope, can't find that information. Keep looking. Yep, Josiah was 8 years old. You see that in 22 verse 1. So he took over from his dad, who was a pretty evil king. Josiah takes over at 8. When he's around 18, by the time he's 18, he has destroyed all the false idols or gods and the places of worship that shouldn't exist. He follows the way of King David. Remember we talked about King David and that King David made a big mistake. He committed adultery and then followed it up by what you would call premeditated second-degree murder kind of thing. However, he repented, and we don't know exactly where he stands, but that's not up to us. The point is, he never deviated from believing in God. He never, like the other kings, decided to give up on God completely and go follow some other idols. So although David made a mistake, we don't judge on that, and we just know that him and Jesus Christ still have a really good relationship, and they always did. It's just like a friend. We weren't there. We don't really know, okay? We can know a little bit of the story, but we don't get the whole thing. So he followed the way of David, is what I'm saying, and he was a good king. He followed the Lord, wanted to live the gospel, and he got rid of all that, and then the garbage that had been going on, said, no, you can't do that, outlawed it all, tried to gather the people back together. In doing so, finds the scroll, the people he was in his army and group of people, found the scroll of scripture that talked about the covenants that Moses had put the children of Israel under and how they were living that. And Josiah really liked that. He's like, that's a really good idea. This is a good thing for the people. I know this is of God and I want to bring this in. So that chapter 23, and you'll find that in 2 Chronicles as well. I should have really let you know where that was, to be honest. 34. Chapter 34 of 2 Chronicles is the mate to this one. But this particular verse in here, because this is the historical part in 2 Kings, this is not a teaching of the Lord. This is a teaching of the man. This is a description of the history of this man, King Josiah, and how awesome he was. While he delighted in scripture, let's read a little bit about him in verse 25. And that says, and like unto him there was no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to the law of Moses. Neither after him arose there any like him. So Josiah was more godly than David. So when we talk about how amazing David was, and how amazing King Solomon started off, and some of them started off really good, and they lost the plot. Josiah did not. Good king. According to the law of Moses, he did everything he could, and that was the gospel up to that point. Remember, that's what they had, and he did everything he could. And there was none before him as good as him as a king, and none after him as good as a king. So I think that's a really lovely way to put it. But this is a king who delighted in the scriptures, and he found scripture and just embraced it and went with it. So Josiah, while cleaning out the southern kingdom, finds a scroll book of scripture. He delights in reading of the Lord's people making and keeping covenants. He's like no other king before him, and he embraced the Lord and delighted in living his gospel. And we'll talk about the covenant-keeping part in the next one, because that's really good. I think that's going to take you to 2 Chronicles, perhaps. Yes, it is. Here we go. But in the Come Follow Me manual of this week, you'll find a quote from President Kimball, which I really liked. So I put that in. And he just said, I'll read you the whole thing, but the quote thing for it is just the little beginning part. But this is from Teachings of the President of the Church, Spencer W. Kimball. So you'll still be able to find this on the inline, or maybe you've got the book at home, but you'll still be able to find this in the Gospel Library. It still exists there. So yeah, teaching the presidents of the church, Spencer W. Kimball, pages 62 to 63 and 67. So they've taken 3 little sections out, all about President Kimball talking about scriptures and scripture study. So here we go. He said, I am convinced that each of us at some time in our lives must discover the scriptures for ourselves, and not just discover them once, but rediscover them again and again. He goes on to say, I feel strongly that we must all of us return to the scriptures just as King Josiah did, and let them work mightily within us, impelling us to an unwavering determination to serve the Lord. Finishes off by saying, I find that when I get casual in my relationships with divinity, and when it seems that no divine ear is listening and no divine voice is speaking, that I am far, far away. If I immerse myself in the scriptures, the distance narrows and the spirituality returns. I find myself loving more intensely those whom I must love with all my heart and mind and strength, and loving them more, I find it easier to abide their counsel. And that really is how it works. Like, he describes that very clearly, succinctly, and in like one paragraph, quite simply. When you're feeling distant and you're not feeling heard by the Lord, immerse yourself in the scriptures, because in doing so, you find that you love those that you should love, like the prophet, like the Lord, like your family perhaps. And even though you don't have to be best buddies with them, you're more compassionate towards others because you're in that space. Not every time can you just immerse yourself in the scriptures and suddenly be happy. Again, this is a process and a learning time, and you need to do it properly, study properly, and get yourself in the right frame of mind. Like, if you're in the midst of a anger tantrum, reading scriptures, not a good idea, right? But if you're just feeling down and you're like, okay, I need to break this monotony, this that's going on with me, immerse yourself in the scriptures. If you feel like you're not hearing the Lord on an answer, immerse yourself in the scriptures. That's what he's saying. And that, you can easily follow the prophet's words, and you can easily follow the words of the scriptures if you're immersed in them and you understand them more and you just embrace them into your life. As King Josiah did. He didn't just discover them once, he discovered them over and over again. So are you doing that? When did you last delight in the scriptures and discovering things? My husband this last week in study found, I can't even remember the name of the guy. He's just like, I love that name, it's so cool. And he got all excited about this name just because it sounded funny. I'd have to ask him what it was, sorry. But yeah, it just, again, delighting in the scriptures this week. And in the midst of an ugly week for us, we've found joy in the scriptures. And it's like taking you away from where you are into another movie set where everyone's got worse problems, and you suddenly like, actually, we're okay. That's what it has for this week for us anyway. So yeah, rediscover the scriptures, delight in them. They're joyful. All right, hang around. We're going to go back to 2 Chronicles. I'll see you there.